Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of the Voices of Rondo Youth podcast. My name is Moises, along with my fellow host here.
My name is Javier Soto.
My name is Erica Lee.
So today we'll be discussing the Clarksdale, Mississippi trip that HSRA took in partnership with the Mississippi-based nonprofit. We will also be diving into music and civil rights history and how that connects Clarksdale to Rondo. Mm-hmm. So I think before we get into that, we'll show you the video in case you didn't see it.
There we go.
Yeah, Keith didn't believe me when I told him about it.
About what? About
that
these?
These were hotel rentals down
oh, yeah.
we stayed in.
Yeah, dude, that's insane.
Isn't it?
This is bizarre as hell. And they got like a little like, oh, what?
They're profiting from.
Yeah. They're the quarters where people used to stay who worked the fields. And this was a site that was an old cotton gin where they spun the cotton automatically and put people out of work. This was one of the very first sites that put people out of work in the cotton fields and created the Great Migration.
So crazy.
Yeah, look at this.
So that was the video. Now, I didn't go down there, so I think it's more, well for you guys to discuss it. So would you guys?
Right. So just to give a little bit more context to that video. So me and a handful of high school for recording arts students took a trip down to Clarksdale, Mississippi a few months ago. And one of the places we visited was the Hopson Plantation. And on the Hopson Plantation sits a white-owned business called the Shack Up Inn. And so basically like I said, it's a white-owned business, and they have refurbished and used former sharecropper homes, and they have turned them into homes that people can rent and stay in. So I just want to pause right there. So we should talk about that. What are your thoughts about that?
There's not much to say other than the fact that it's just kind of overall terrible. I feel like even then that's just an understatement. Right. Given all the history, all the families and people that have gone through those homes and, lived there, been there, lived their lives there. And now it's just kind of like that history is almost being extorted.
Right. What do you think, Moises?
It's disgusting. It's just like the way they just use those homes as just like they're profiting off of that.
Right.
Like that's where people stayed when they worked as sharecroppers for little to no pay, and that's just like profiting off of trauma.
Right, exactly. I agree with you. I think it's disgusting how these sharecropper homes, it's filled with black pain and black trauma, and is still wet from the blood, sweat, and tears of these people, and it's being owned by white people, and they're profiting off of that. I think that's like utterly disrespectful, more than disrespectful, and like the way that I see it, I think that it should be owned by the black community. I think that it should be a place of mourning. I think it should be a place where we can go to learn about our history and to honor our ancestors and to honor everything they went to so that we can be here right now.
Yeah, it should definitely be a museum that a place to remember that history. Exactly. And not sleep in it and not profit off of it.
Yeah, the way they're I guess the way they have it set up, it's almost like it never happened. Like they're just not acknowledging the fact, that what these are, what this means to these people, it's like that just means nothing to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if the people who stay there know what it is.
They know? There's no possible way you can. I mean, you're hundreds of feet from a cotton field.
We didn't talk about that. There's literally a cotton field there.
Yeah, you're right. For the aesthetic.
For the aesthetic, just to keep it historically accurate, I guess. Right. Yeah, I wonder if the people when you get them in there, do they bring that up? Or is it oh no, this is our property? Right,
and even on the website, it doesn't mention that those homes are former sharecropper homes. It doesn't even mention that. So it's they don't want people to know the real history of that. They don't. No.
So the Hopson Plantation originally was kind of where it's not where they originally manufactured it, but I believe it's where they started introducing it into farming.
Yeah, it was one of the first places where the mechanized cotton gin started up.
And that eventually led to sharecroppers losing jobs, which caused the Great Migration, which caused everything else. A lot. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of history that's gone into just that one place.
Yeah, and they were struggling to begin with, and like now that they're out of jobs, they just had to go north to industrial jobs.
Right. So the Black community was losing jobs from this. So we had to go up north and out west to find jobs, to find ways to make money to support us and our family. And so one of the main ways of the migration was using the highway systems. Like, for example, the Hopson Plantation sits right by Highway 49, also known as the Great Blues Highway, which was a huge outlet that the Black community would use to migrate from Mississippi and the Delta region down there.
But now you bring up the point that they used the highways to get up, but it was dangerous for them to do so because the infrastructure surrounding the highways, the services, did not serve them. They had to go specific locations or just keep going and it was dangerous.
Right. And then also, I think it's important when we're talking about highway systems, I think it's really important to mention how a lot of them were built using prison labor.
Yep.
And then you also have to factor in how Black and brown people have been historically and still are being mass incarcerated. And then you also have to factor in how the 13th Amendment says that slavery is still legal as a punishment for crime. So the point that I'm getting at here is that the prison industrial complex of the United States of America was created to continue slavery. It's a modern day slavery.
Yeah, I didn't learn that in school.
That's Me neither? Yeah. No.
You'll never learn that.
Never.
No
No,
one will
they
ever
won't.
learn that.
No,
Yeah.
not at
Because they
all.
will continuously try to bury that and just sweep it under the rug.
And so let's ask the question, so why exactly was it dangerous for the Black community to use these main road systems and highways? This kind of brings us into the conversation of the Green Book, if anybody wants to introduce that.
Yes, so there are many towns along the highways known as sundown towns where at night, once the sun went down, African Americans were not allowed outside, or else they would be assaulted, lynched, killed, murdered, humiliated. But I want to bring this to a person who I think is a national hero, who should be taught in schools, a man named Victor Hugo Green. He was a person from Harlem, New York. He was a postal worker, and he saw this in his own city, New York City, and he made a thing known as the Green Book. And the first publication only included the New York area, but year after year included more and more of the U.S., and the whole U.S. was covered. And I think in Alaska, only one location served African Americans in the entirety of Alaska. But anyways, that really helped African Americans go through their country and be safe doing so.
Right. So basically,
and it was the earliest highway safety guide ever. And it was a guide that African Americans to safety.
Right. And so like you said, the Green Book was created as a guide to guide the Black community as we traveled across the United States, especially in the South. And so the Green Book listed different various barbershops and restaurants and hotels and guest homes that would serve the Black community and were welcoming to us. And then it also listed places that we should be wary of and we should stay away from, such as sundown towns, like you explained, were towns where Black people couldn't be seen out at night once the sun set because they would be beaten, arrested, lynched. And
I believe there are some here, no?
Yeah, exactly.
In this state.
Yeah, exactly. When I first heard about what a sundown town was, I thought they only existed in the South.
Right.
But doing more research, they actually existed all over the U.S., especially in the Midwest, especially in Illinois. And Minnesota even had some of our own, such as Edina and St. Louis Park, and many more, I'm sure.
Right, many more.
Right. And then also, along with that, though, there were places in Minnesota that the Green Book listed that were welcoming to the Black community, such as the Avalon Hotel in Rochester, Minnesota.
I know for a fact that growing up, I genuinely thought sundown towns were a myth. I did not think those were real. That I was told that they weren't real. Specifically that never happened.
Yeah.
Those didn't exist. What do you? Whoever's teaching you that is just wrong. And now, having been down to Clarksdale, even being here, knowing that sundown towns existed in my general area.
Right.
It was just, it's sad. It's saddening.
Right, because how could a whole municipality just ban a people at night?
And you have to remember, a lot of this history has been, they try to cover it up. So I'm sure there's a lot of records that we don't have about many other cities that were sundown towns that we don't know about to this day. So why are we talking about the Great Migration? Why are we talking about Clarksdale? So we're talking about this so that we can explain to the audience, you all, the connection between places like Rondo and Clarksdale. And in fact, many people that are from Rondo through the Great Migration can trace their ancestry back to Mississippi.
Now, talking about like this inequality that happened in the past. Now, we like to think that it's over, that most of that's just squashed down. But the I-94 highway to me is like, it still exists today. And that,
Definitely.
yeah. Just,
Right, and so it shows you that no matter where the Black community migrates to, no matter where we flee from and flee to, we're not going to escape systemic racism. That is the system of our country. That's one of the pillars of our country. That's what our country was built off of. So no matter where we go, it's always going to be present. And an example of that is the I-94 highway being built straight through Rondo.
yeah, destroyed 700 homes, and like it made the ownership in the Rondo community go down by half.
The home ownership, yeah.
The home ownership of, yeah. It caused a
Right.
lot of destruction, and a lot of generational wealth was lost in that. And it's the same thing as what happened in Jim Crow, how white supremacists were bombing towns, displacing people.
Right.
Same thing. The
Yeah,
end is the same, just that the only difference is that instead of people wearing white robes and having torches, it's people in big buildings with suits on,
Right,
voting
exactly.
for it.
And I have a story for that. So my grandma, her and her family are from Mississippi, and they had to leave because the KKK knocked at their door, and they were threatening to kill her father if they stayed there. So they had to leave. They had to sell their home and leave. And so they fled to Iowa, where he could find a job at the John Deere factory in Waterloo. So I mean, that's just crazy, because like that's just my grandma. So that just really shows you how this is not like
Yeah.
some far back history. Like this is like today kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I think that really goes to show that no matter how far we try to run, no matter where we go, it's just we will be followed by, or not even followed. It's just like you said, it's what our country's built on.
Right, it's
the
everywhere.
pillar of
Yeah.
everything, and it's
Right.
just like it's seeped into the ground that the hatred and all the wrongdoings were just inescapable, and it's not even like the people who inflicted that pain. They'll say they're trying to get away from it, and then pass bills into through Congress making the same thing happen.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
they'll build a highway through a certain neighborhood somewhere.
Right, when there was a
It'll-
better path they could have taken.
Yes, there was a better path.
Explain, please.
I mean,
There's no explanation other than
Yeah.
the fact that they're doing it on purpose to bring us
Right.
down.
I mean, yeah, it had
But
it.
they'll
had it.
always find some bullcrap explanation
Yeah.
to give, though.
Yeah. First, they concentrate the African American
Right,
population.
by redlining.
Redlining, and then they're like, you know what? That's not good enough. We're gonna cut a highway through
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So, but now I know it's depressing talk, right? But it's talk that needs to be said. But there is hope. Reconnect Rondo, I think is an example of that, and we're an example of that,
Yeah.
of talking about it. So, other organizations like it are hoping to address those wrongs of the past. And I don't know if you guys know this, but in St. Paul, there's a inheritance fund where they assist former Rondo residents or current Rondo residents that lost their homes and buying a new home in the community. I think it's like $100 in a mortgage assistance. So I think there's hope.
Yeah.
There is hope.
And like when it comes to like Reconnect Rondo and trying to build the land bridge and reconnect the community, it's like that sounds great, that sounds awesome, right? But then there's also questions too, and like rightfully so. Like for example, who's going to be building the land bridge? Is it going to be built by the community or built by private contractors coming in? Is the construction of it going to damage any nearby buildings or homes? And also, most importantly, is it what the Rondo community wants? Is it what the people want? Because I can sit up here all day and give my opinions about whether or not the land bridge should be built. But at the end of the day, I'm not from Rondo. I don't have any family connections and history back to Rondo. I'm just some kid from North Minneapolis who grew up in Brooklyn Center. I don't have any place to be talking about that kind of issue because it's not even my community.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, but it's about the vision. And I think it's our job as youth to make sure that vision happens and becomes reality. So, questions are good, but we need to fight for them. Yeah.
Even as someone who's from this community,
Right.
and who's lived here for at least what I would consider a decently long time, the first I heard about this was like not even last year, earlier this year. I was completely unaware of what went on, of what happened, of what is currently happening. You know, I think not that it means nothing, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people see it and don't realize that it actually means something. They just see another project, like it could be gentrification, it could just be, you know, another misleading program that they're gonna say is gonna fix everything and solve all of our problems, but in reality just does nothing to hurt more. But like you said, there's hope. And as long as we're here to kind of spread that message.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
I think people, you know, eventually people will see and realize what it means and that it's not just for nothing.
Yeah. So you guys didn't just go to Clarksdale to just view a rental business using sharecroppers. There's, you know, some music in that. And then would you talk about that more?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if we said this already, but we were down in Clarksdale, not for Reconnect Rondo.
Yeah.
But we were there for a trip for HSRA and another sponsor. And when we were down there, we went to a lot of like blues museums, specifically the Grammy Museum, the B.B. King Museum. While we were there, I think we saw a lot of, I don't know. I originally thought it was just going to be music, right? And that's just what it was gonna like be the extent of what we were gonna learn. But then when we were down there and we saw like we were learning about Muddy Waters, we were in the Mississippi Delta Blues Museum, and they had his house. They had his whole house in there, and it wasn't just like a replica. That was his home.
Like an official thing.
Yeah, they. I don't know if that was. It wasn't.
Was
the
it moved
site
there or like?
Yeah, I think they moved it there.
Right.
But the wood was real. It was really his house, and it was Muddy Waters' home. That's where he grew up. And being there, you know, made me realize that he was more than just a musician who, kind of like electrified the blues. He was an important role in civil rights because the stories he was telling, and not even just him, the stories all, you know, African American artists from that region had to tell were more than just songs. They were more than just like I don't know. You hear stuff on the radio today that sounds super like catchy and poppy, like it'll catch your ear, yeah, but a lot of the times they don't tell the stories that like Muddy Waters or Howlin' Wolf will tell.
Exactly.
Because those stories were about their day-to-day lives, being sharecroppers, you know, being Black Americans, being in Mississippi, having to deal with their you know, with racism, with all the struggles they had. It was more than just music. It was what they felt. It was what they lived.
Right. And the Black community has had such an impact on modern day music and all the different genres. But I also feel like it's important to recognize that this is not just, you know, different variations of music. This is not just music genres. This is the way that the Black community expresses ourselves and our lived experiences. And honestly, when I asked the question of, you know, why are we talking about the Great Migration? Why are we talking about Clarksdale? And I said to show the connection between places like Rondo and Clarksdale. I think music is one of those things. And not even just the connection between the Black community of the American North and South, but also just the Black community across the entire diaspora, because the transatlantic slaves trade went all over the Atlantic and Europe and North America, South America, Central America, the Caribbean, you know, and like we're all over these different places, but music is something that really connects all of us. It truly does.
Absolutely.
Right.
Those musicians from Clarksdale, the Blues Highway, which you mentioned earlier, actually runs all the way up to Minnesota, or at least up to I-94. And they kind of converge, I believe. I could be wrong. I don't know my geography, but I know eventually you'll get here.
Yeah, it leads down there.
And right off I-94 is the ballroom, the Rondo Ballroom, where a lot of those musicians came and they played. And not only did those musicians, or did musicians come from Clarksdale, Mississippi, or down south, they also came from here. You know, we have artists that do more than just music. We have like Wee Willie Walker, who came from Rondo. We have who else?
Irv Williams?
Yeah, Irv Williams.
Oh, he moved to Rondo from Arkansas.
Yeah.
Yeah. He played the tenor sax.
And then there's so much more than music that comes here. And that comes from here.
Yeah.
Right, it's a culture.
And that just shows you that
Exactly.
Rondo was the center of that.
Exactly.
And that was
Right.
very greatly diminished by the highway.
Right, exactly.
I fully believe that when this land bridge is finished and when it is all said and done and we're just deciding what to put on it,
Right.
at that point, I think we need to have spaces for that art to come back and be like breathed through the community. We need to have like art spaces. We need to have performance spaces. We need to have whatever we can to cater to those people who want to make this music, who want to make this art. We need to keep them in mind.
Right, we need to teach that history and continue it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, musical artists, despite their fame, their fortune, they were still treated with prejudice and racism. And I think a good example of that is Bessie Smith, who I believe got into a car accident and was just straight denied medical attention because she was black. And obviously this is like, it sounds like such a terrible story. Why would this ever happen to anybody? But the reality is that it's probably not the only story there is.
Right.
Well, not probably, it just isn't the only story there is.
Right.
And I think people fail to see that not only was the African American community like shut out and refused service and diners and hotels, but they were also just denied like basic human needs.
Right.
Water, life-saving attention. You know, like all of the things they never got. All the lives lost simply because the color of their skin. Because they couldn't put the fact that someone looked different than them aside.
Right.
Just to help them.
Right. And this goes to show that because of the society and because of the world we live in, black people are seen as black before we're seen as anything else. You know, we're black before we're famous. We're black before we're rich. We're black before we're college graduates. You know, before we are any of these things, we're seen as black and we're going to be treated as such. And that goes to show you that.
Sam Cooke, for example, was arrested simply because of the color of his skin.
Yeah, and Tina Turner was like, she was called the N-word by a Capitol executive and did not want to put her work out.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Happened in the music industry, executive there.
It happened everywhere. People just like to act like it was only one isolated incident
Right.
or in one certain part of the country, like it only happened in the South or something.
Right. Right.
But even in the North, even in places where it was considered to be a safe haven for African Americans, it never really was.
No.
Never.
Unless obviously you had the people who were able to put the fact that just because you look different don't mean we are different past them. It's just, I don't know, it's really gross to think that there are people you descend from. Well, people that we're close with, that, descend from such like hatred and bigotry. And it's like it was nothing but growing up. It was nothing but just the way things were.
Just living your life.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And like all this oppression, hatred, pain, like eventually culminated in the civil rights movement, where people stood up and demanded, equal rights and desegregation. And, a question is that or a thing we always thought is that, oh, it only happened in the South. It didn't happen in the North, but no, it happened everywhere.
Yeah.
And another thing is that people think it's over. It is not over. No way in hell is it over.
No. People think the civil rights movement ended. People think that it's no longer a thing. But no, it's still going on, present day. And Minnesota is no exception to that.
Especially Minnesota.
Right. I mean, you have the police murders of George Floyd and Philando Castile and Dante Wright. And then you have Minnesota approving line and bridge to build Line 3 through Native American land in northern Minnesota, breaking treaties. You have redlining the creation of hoods and ghettos, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, and these are just a few examples of how systemic racism has played out in Minnesota. It bothers me so much when people put Minnesota on this pedestal of yes, Minnesota is this amazing, democratic, progressive, safe haven that is so much better than all the other states. But no, it's not. It's really not. It has blood on its hands. It does.
Yeah.
It's not even just the blood of African Americans either.
No, definitely not. I also forgot to mention the Dakota 38 in Mankato, where that was the largest mass execution in this country, where 38 Dakota men were hung.
Yeah, and Fort Snelling, the thing that started St. Paul, that was a concentration camp.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure the Nazis got inspiration from that. It's they saw what was happening here, and they're like, you know what, we're gonna use it against the Jews.
Good idea. That's exactly what they thought to themselves.
Yeah. Hey, the Americans did it. They did it well. That's crazy.
I think, like you mentioned earlier, Reconnect Rondo is a proof. It's living proof. We are living proof that the civil rights movement is not dead.
It's going on still.
Right.
And that we are still holding strong. And that even though people may live together, and even though people may be able to use this water fountain after the white man, it doesn't mean that we're not being oppressed. No. And it doesn't mean that civil rights aren't still a huge problem in this country.
Just because you have a black friend does not mean you don't benefit from white supremacy.
So funny when they say, hey, I have black friends. I have black friends.
My friend's daughter's dog's owner is black. I can't be racist. Oh, damn.
Yeah, but it's really moved away from segregation and more towards living free of discrimination in general. And I think Reconnect Rondo was an example of that, of a restorative justice of fixing problems of the past and actually making something out of that to make it better than it was. So there's hope, guys. There is hope.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Rondo wasn't even the only community that was impacted by just
Yes, this was a national act. Happened everywhere in all the cities. And guess what? Happened to African American communities in those cities.
Almost always.
Yes.
Always,
not
Definitely.
specifically.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll be covering that in the next podcast, but
Yeah. In future podcasts we'll actually be talking more about other communities that have been affected by, similar situations, having highways run through them, or anything of that.
Right.
This.
No, it's definitely not just Rondo. You have to step back and look at the bigger picture. You have to look at this as systemic and not just some crazy things that just happened.
Like a fluke thing.
Yeah, just whoa, how did this happen? No, this is what's supposed to be happening. This is their plan, just laying out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Almost anywhere you see where there's a highway, where there's a freeway, where there's an interstate, whatever the difference may be.
There used to be homes there.
There used to be homes there.
Yep.
So this is all something we'll discuss in the next podcast. We'll be discussing the Bloomberg article. We've done some research on that, that covers many cities in the U.S. that have been disconnected, decimated by the interstate highway system.
Right.
So, stay tuned for the next podcast.
Yes. Thank you all for watching.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so to learn more, you can go to reconnectrondo.com or follow us on social media at Reconnect Rondo.